Andy Biggs, welcome back. I'm sorry to say it's not on another very pleasant day. We haven't had very many lately, I'm sorry to report.
Seth, it's good to be back with you. And when the history of 2020 is written, remember that the year started with the impeachment of the president and an acquittal followed or overlapped by the COVID virus, which is overlapped now by civil unrest and rioting in America.
Riots in America, God knows. You had a great, and I'm sorry for that language, you had a great op-ed on this in Fox News I want to direct people to. End riots, restore freedom. Too many aiding in bad behavior. Andy, one of the things, because we've had you on just about once a week over the last several months, walking us and talking us through a lot of our coronavirus response. So many of us looking forward to some semblance of restoring normalcy, which we knew was going to be a heavy lift, only to be faced with cities being shut down again by street thugs in many cases and by orders in others. Andy, I can't help but think that that the unnatural condition all Americans were put in for about 3 months, quarantining the healthy, shutdowns, lockdowns, loss of business, loss of the ability to exercise, quite frankly, loss of the ability to socialize. It created what many of us knew it was going to create, some kind of mental health crisis. I can't help but think that this is some of the fallout of it as well, that these are conditions that in part some of the shutdowns and lockdowns have led to, but it's based on a faulty premise, which is that America is a sick society. That's what the rioters are telling us, and it is far from it. It's based on the premise that America is a racist society. It's far from it. Indeed, the dramatic irony of all these things is that some 99% of the country agreed with the peaceful protesters that the killing of George Floyd was one of the most horrific scenes we've seen on television in years. And it led to, with that great agreement, this kind of anarchy we're now seeing in our streets. It's a very odd thing, sir.
Yeah, it really is. So unpacking what you said, there's some things to think about. First of all, and we've discussed this now for months, the pathologies that come along with locking people down who are otherwise healthy. Who were mentally healthy, physically healthy, and perhaps largely even spiritually healthy, and you locked them down in a very unhealthful manner. And so, when the Census Bureau announced last week that they had sent out a survey, it was turned by 48,000 people. They had 4 questions in it dealing specifically with the questions that are used by to form a clinical diagnosis by psychiatrists and psychologists for clinical depression. Those were in there and embedded in this series of 100 questions. And over a third answered in a way that a psychiatrist would say, look, they've answered, at least clinically, that they're clinically depressed. So you have, which is not necessarily even surprising that you would have a third. Perhaps what's surprising is you don't have more than that.
Agreed.
Because I think we all face these things, and then you throw in the generational issues of indoctrination into what I would call the critical race theory, which you and I have talked about before. Because really that's what you're seeing. Because in reality, I didn't hear a single person in my circle, outside my echo chamber, on the right or the left in the media, any public official, no one who wasn't condemnatory of what happened to George Floyd.
Absolutely.
And so we actually, as a nation, support the expression of being aggrieved. Regardless of your reason for being aggrieved, in this instance, it was feeling that this had been a racially charged killing. We would say, okay, let us protest. We respect your right to protest, and then let's see if we can come to a conclusion on how to solve the problem. And we went and they got hijacked, as we all know now.
Mm-hmm.
Antifa's out there, and they're rightly called a domestic terrorist group.
Mm-hmm.
You have other people. I saw an interview of a young man who had been looting a store in Santa Monica, and the TV announcer said, "So why are you here? You're here because to protest, or for some other reason?" He says, "I'm here for the money.
Right.
Came to get money and
Right.
to loot."
Right.
So you have just basically thuggery that's out there, and then this morning, and I got to say this as long as I got you here,
Mm-hmm.
I got interviewed by a fellow who was basically asking incendiary questions. You know, Black Lives Matter has also been termed a domestic terrorist,
Mm-hmm.
not because of any position other than the fact that they bring violence and et cetera. That's kind of the word that I get, that they're modeled that way. But this reporters asking me questions, and I finally said to them, I said, "Look, here's the deal. We need to ratchet down the narrative.
Right.
You're asking incendiary questions in an incendiary fashion in order to incite
Right.
further violence and discord in the country. And what we really need to do is ratchet that down so we can find the elements of commonality and goodness in our society. And then because no society nor individual is perfect, let's find out where we're not perfect and try to correct those issues." And he was having none of it. He wanted to incite.
Yeah, that's right, because there is a crisis industrial complex here, and this is the latest iteration of it, trying to lecture and probably teach, if not reteach, the rest of the country that, yes, we have a massive problem in this society that is known by the name of racism, and that we are more racist. You hear this at these protests all the time. You hear this in the media all the time. We are more racist than we ever have been. It's a lie, Andy. It's an absolute lie that's ahistorical and unhistorical. But you create that kind of mythology, and you can begin to appreciate why young people understand perhaps why young people will take to the streets over such bad news. By bad news, I mean bad news informed by bad facts.
No, that's right. And that's what I talk about when I say indoctrination.
Yes.
Because if you don't know your history,
right.
and you're all you're relying on is the history of America according to Zen,
yeah.
You're going to have kind of a misshapen appreciation from where we were, where we've come to, and like I told this guy today, I said, we're not perfect. I'm not perfect. I have flaws aplenty, and who doesn't? But I tell you what, this country is still the best country, giving more people more opportunity and more freedom than any other country in the history of the world. And to try to change that fact, which you can go back and look at history and say, yeah, that makes sense. Look at where we've been, and I just view it as an indoctrination.
And the tragic part here is if you tried to say that on the corner of, I don't know, Connecticut and M Street in DuPont Circle, you would get punched in the face. You would get punched in the face.
But you can't say
you cannot say it.
In the halls of Congress now, we have open Marxists.
Right.
We have people who hate our country and believe our country is evil. That the institutions are evil, and I always try to tell them institutions cannot be evil. It is the people who create and
Correct.
run institutions
Correct.
that are either good or evil.
Correct.
But we can't have that kind of logical discourse right now because everything is so viscerally charged, emotionally charged, that you cannot move in the direction of saying, let's sit down and have, over a fresh squeezed glass of iced grapefruit juice from Arizona. Let's just sit down over that and let's talk about some of our problems, what your issues are. And then let me tell you about what some of my issues are, and maybe we can come to some kind of accord on how we address those issues. Maybe you never get there. But you know what? I know one thing. when you're bashing people over the head, torching buildings, stealing life savings from people, you know what? You're probably not ever going to get some kind of rational discourse to resolve issues.
You have those people in Congress. You have those people on the streets. They're what I call forces of decomposition. You are what I call a force of composition, Andy Biggs. To the degree that you prevail is to the degree we will all prevail. So God bless you, sir. May your voice grow stronger and may you stay well.
Thanks.